At the same time, the Indian government has taken significant steps in ensuring adoption of digitalization across businesses in India. The implementation of the central e-government portal, as well as programs such as Digital India and Startup Mission, have catalyzed the need for all businesses, including SMEs, to adapt and implement digital solutions across their practices. On the other hand, it is of course important to note that SMEs often do not have the resources available to implement digital solutions available to large-scale enterprises. This is of course a restriction. Often there may be an inherent skill gaps as well in the enterprises, a lack of understanding of the solutions offered by digitization, as well as lack of access to financing for the implementation of digital solutions by the businesses. Apologies. The implementation of digitization by SMEs has the potential to support supply chain management, inventory management, enterprise resource management, customer relationship management, big data analysis, to identify target potential clients, as well as digital payment systems. As one of the most rapidly increasing e-commerce markets in the world, with an estimate of 214 hyperlocal customers across India by the end of 2022, it is essential for businesses to ensure a digital presence. Estimates already suggest that approximately 43% of all SMEs in India already participate in online sales. Now, at the same time, it's important for SMEs to harness all the digital tools available for their expansion, not only in the domestic markets, but internationally as well. Moreover, as global markets, including those in the European Union, move towards establishing roles on sustainable supply chains, it is now more imperative than ever before for SMEs in India to adopt and implement digital solutions. That will allow them to continue enhancing their business cooperation with European enterprises. We at EBDC, as a project advisory and facilitation organization, we're dedicated to enhancing business cooperations within the wider Europe-India business corridor. In order to facilitate the internationalization of business enterprises, particularly SMEs in the Europe-India corridor, EBDC has partnered with leading organizations in Europe and India to provide pre-internationalization support to SMEs in this corridor. Our pre-internationalization support program identifies digital gaps in SMEs interested in entering foreign markets, provides support with regard to strategic quality management systems, technology and innovation management, as well as advise on intellectual property rights. The pre-internationalization program seeks to provide strategic advice to both Europe.
क्या हुआ? नहीं लगाई है?
नहीं है? कोई बात नहीं. The pre-internationalization program seeks to provide strategic advice to both European and Indian enterprises interested in their internationalization into their respective markets on the payment of a nominal fee. At the same time, in order to develop bilateral collaborations between Europe and India and Indian SMEs, particularly those engaged in the development of new and innovative solutions, EBDC, we regularly cooperate with relevant stakeholders between Europe and India. As an example, we have instituted a cooperation partnership with the European Lightweight Clusters Alliance. This alliance, which is a network of 12 centers of excellence spread across 9 EU member states, seeks to develop, implement, and adapt innovations to address resource efficiency in various sectors, including the automotive and aerospace sectors. With an understanding of the role SMEs play in developing innovative solutions, as well as their role in the global supply chains, EBDC we have sought to establish business-to-business cooperation between Europe and Indian enterprises and institutions. Also, with the strategic interest in sustainable mobility and transportation, we have set up a cluster with the objective to bring together European and Indian enterprises to establish a joint value proposition to address demand-driven project opportunities on the ground in India. So I think all in all, I think there's a huge potential for Indian SMEs in the digital space to collaborate with European counterparts. There's more and more acceptance. There's the coming together. There are Indian government initiatives to support this. We work with these agencies. We work with European agencies. We try to bridge this, and happy to address any questions afterwards to see if there's any support that we can potentially provide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vincent Lord, for your comments and a very excellent talk. Of course, our Prime Minister's flagship programs of Digital India and Skill India are definitely going to be in line with further development of e-commerce. Also, here I would like to make a point here is that India is a well-educated and English-speaking force available for e-commerce. So that's going to be a major advantage for the world to collaborate with India in e-commerce. Thank you again, Mr. Vincent Nord, for your comments and feedback. I now move on to our next speaker, Mr. Vibhor Jain. My question to him is that what is the role of ONDC in strengthening the opportunities for SMEs in the manufacturing sector in India, and how SMEs can make use of the e-commerce platform towards better integration into the supply chain, both in national and international markets? Okay, over to you, Mr. Vibhor Jain.
Thanks, Mr. Engineer, for inviting me for this conference. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. In fact, it's post 12, so good afternoon, everyone. So I think, as you rightly pointed out, COVID definitely has disrupted the entire business ecosystem. You have MSMEs, which today contribute almost 30% plus to the nation's GDP. And almost 50% to the overall exports that happen from India. And with whatever has happened in the last 2 years, right, we've seen there is a huge concern around orders flowing into MSMEs, availability of raw material, the supply chains getting disrupted, skilled manpower becoming an issue, liquidity becoming an issue for the MSMEs, right? So these are some of the challenges which are there in normal course as well, but obviously have got amplified because of the pandemic and the impact of that over the last 2 years. I think if I look at the entire initiative of Open Network for Digital Commerce, is basically coming out of these concerns which exist in the sector, both on the retail side and also on the institutional or the MSME side. And I think that's where the government came up with this initiative of saying, how can we really enhance the penetration of digital commerce in the country? Which means how do we empower and enable more and more MSMEs in this context, sort of to take on digital commerce and enhance their presence digitally, which obviously helps them sort of engage with other businesses in an online world. So that's the broad sort of concept as to why this network came about, right? And I think upfront sort of a clarification that this is a network and not a platform, as a lot of people currently think, right? So let's understand for 2 minutes what this network really does, right? And what's the advantage of someone being on this platform, and then I'll link it back to how some of the problems that exist today could potentially get resolved with a network like ONDC. So basically, today, if I look at it, when we look at digital commerce, and let's think of a MSME, right? If I were to sort of be online in terms of engaging in business, the options that exist today are minimalistic, right? One option is I go to platforms and I register myself on platforms as a business. Which then obviously opens a world of opportunities for me, right? There are a lot of B2B platforms today out there. I can register with one of them or multiple of them and do business. The second is obviously having my own sort of, storefront, which represents my business and be visible out there. But in both the scenarios, I think the challenge that exists is neither of them are universal in nature. What does that mean? That basically means that even if I go to a platform, okay, say ABCD platform, my universe of potential demand for the products or services I am in is restricted to the users of that particular platform, right? And if I want to go beyond that universe of users, I maybe need to go to a different platform and then to a different platform to enhance my demand generation, which obviously puts a lot of administrative burden on a small merchant or a small MSME to say, okay, I'm anyway small, and how do I have the administrative resources to be on multiple platforms to enhance my discoverability online and therefore be able to generate demand on the other side? So that's a big problem. The second larger problem is whenever we go to any of these platforms for a B2B engagement, uh, one has to sort of, fall in line in terms of the terms of the trade that the platform dictates, right? And these are not negotiable, right? So either I accept those terms and conditions, or I cannot be on those platforms. So as a MSME, I have very limited wherewithal to negotiate terms or do business on my terms. There is someone else as a central intermediary who is defining the terms of the trade in which I should be operating. So looking at these sort of challenges, the government said what can be done to enhance the visibility of an MSME online digitally, and at terms where the MSME is comfortable doing business. And that's where we said, what if we unbundle this black box called platform and and make systems interoperable? So what does this mean in very simple terms? It basically means that today what we see as a platform has a buyer side to it, has a seller side to it. Right? You have a buyer and a seller, both come to a common platform and engage. We're saying let's break it down in the center, in the middle. There's a buyer platform, there's a seller platform. And any buyer platform should be able to talk to any seller platform, irrespective of which platform I'm coming from. Take a very different example to simplify this understanding. Today, some of you might be on a Gmail email account. I might be on a Yahoo email account. Mr. Engineer might be on say a Yahoo email or a Hotmail email account, right? We are still able to exchange emails with each other, right? And there are machines which are talking to each other, which can understand what someone is sending to me in an email and print or publish that on my interface in the same format of to CC subject content of that email. Now, this is enabled because there is underlying technology or a protocol to be specific called SMTP, which enables this communication to happen, which has defined the format in which an email has to go, right? And therefore, any new email provider who comes on the network on the web is able to talk to any other email provider because that standard is set. What we have done at ONDC is something similar, right? We have set these standards for two machines to exchange information and undertake a commerce transaction, right? And then when we say interoperable, this is what it means, that any two machines can now talk in commerce language. We talk in English, we talk in Hindi, we talk in Tamil. Now machines can talk in a commerce language called protocols, which is what ONDC is building, right? Which basically means that if I am on this network called ONDC, any buyer side app, whether it is application A or application B or application C, can discover me and can do a commercial transaction with me on the network. Okay. So I'm a seller. I come on the network through a platform or a seller platform, as we call it, of my choice. And any of the consumer platforms can see me and place an order. So what happens with this? With this, overnight, my discoverability is not confined to a platform, but to a set of consumer or the buyer platforms on the network. So if there are 20 buyer platforms on the network, I coming through only one seller platform can be discovered by those 20 buyer platforms consumers, and they can place an order on me out there, right? So if I look at it now administratively, I am just concentrating and focusing on one seller platform, but yes, I can do business with any buyer platform who wants to place an order on me as an MSME, right? For whatever products or services I do. The second thing that is there, this network is not just for products, it's also for services, which means the way you want to place an order on me, I might be making a bearing, a ball bearing as an example. So I'm a seller, I'm on the network, and you want to place an order on me for purchasing that ball bearing. Now, the second part of it is once you've purchased, how do I enable the logistics to happen of this particular ball bearing shipment? The way you could source a product on the network, you can also source logistics on the network. Again, think of the same scenario. There's a buyer for logistics, there is a seller for logistics, right? So a company like say Mahindra Logistics or a Delivery or a DHL, Blue Dart, Gati, they're all sellers of logistics. And I as a MSME could be the buyer of logistics. right? So in the same transaction, I can buy a product and also buy logistics to ship that product to me out there. So that's the broad construct of what ONDC is in terms of the concept. Now, if I go back to the initial problem statement that I spoke about in terms of orders getting reduced, supply chains getting broken, people facing liquidity issues. Now let's see how a network like this would address some of these problems, right? Now the point is, overnight, my discoverability as a business will go up exponentially the moment I come on the network, because as I said, my discoverability is now more universal in nature, which means it's not confined to one platform or two platforms. It's confined to all the buyer platforms which are on the network. Let's take an example again. And again, all these names are just for explanation purposes. So let's assume that there is a buyer coming through India Mart or say Trade India or say government e-marketplace. And these are all coming as buyers on the buyer side. I am coming through on the network through only one seller app called Vibhorjan seller app, as an example. Even though I have come on the network as through Vibhorjan seller app, the consumers of GEM, the businesses, business consumers of India Mart, the business consumers of Trade India, the business consumers of say Google for that matter, all of them can see me, discover me, see my products as a seller of ball bearing, and can do a commercial transaction with me. So my discoverability overnight has gone up, which will help me, enhance the demand for the product I'm serving. And second thing is this Vibhojan platform that I spoke about is something where I'm comfortable doing business because the terms of the trade are favorable to me. I can change those terms. I can define my terms and be on the network, as against the central platform defining the terms and I just adhering to those terms. The second part is I spoke about the supply chain, because obviously from a logistics perspective, which is one critical component of supply chain, that can be enabled on the network, right? So if I have to ship it out to a customer coming from the India Mart buyer portal or to the Trade India buyer portal, I can enable shipment because I can become the buyer of logistics in this case as a MSME, and there'll be providers of logistics for trucking business who will be on the network who can provide net logistics, and I can enable that. Now, what this also does from a working capital perspective, it is also creating a trail, a digital trail of my transactions, which can enable credit for me. And what happens is in real time, financial institutions have visibility. If I want to share that visibility, that's a completely consent-based visibility. If I want to share that visibility, I can expose my orders on the network to the financial institutions, which can help me with maybe a line of credit or something else from a financial product perspective, which also helps me, improve my working capital or cash flow requirements. So I think I'll stop here, but yeah, I think that's broadly, if I look at it, how a concept like ONDC can really enable enhancements or improve the overall operating environment for MSMEs in the country. So I think I'll stop here, Mr. Engineer, and I'm happy to take any questions later on in the discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vibhav Jain. I think ONDC is going to do a great job for MSME sector, because we do have digital e-commerce in the commercial sector, consumer sector, like Tata New, Reliance Retail, Amazon, and of course they have their own terms and conditions, which is not a very open platform. And as you have mentioned, ONDC is going to have quite an open platform. You could set your own terms. You have plus the advantage of logistics also incorporated in it. So it's going to be a great thing. I hope you are also taking care of the payments to the MSME sector also. And I again, once again, thank you for sharing your valuable feedback.
Thank you so much.
We now move on to our next speaker, Mr. S.K. Mohanty, Professor Mohanty. May I request you to throw a light on what are the emerging trends in the global economy which are playing a key role to maintain and progress of MSME sector, and the key initiatives and the areas where the Indian MSMEs can build effective business collaborations globally. Over to you, Mr. Mohanty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Engineer. I must thank Engineering Export Promotion Council for inviting me to this MSME conclave. At the very outset, I would like to say that the present global scenario is extremely volatile. Recently concluded WTO International Conference 12 didn't yield much the way we expected. The continuation of the war between Russia and Ukraine is again another concern. COVID-19 is not yet completely gone from India and other parts of the world. Continuation of protectionism across the globe following the 2 decades of recession is also another concern. So the present situation in the global economy is highly concerned and problematic. This has its own impact on the macroeconomic dynamics of the global economy. Several countries, including US, India, and many other countries, getting into serious difficulties in terms of very high inflation. Sri Lankan case of debt crisis. Similarly, foreign exchange reserves depleting in many countries. Exchange rate volatility is also becoming paramount in the recent years. So, in nutshell, the world economy is in a great trouble. But with all negative developments, one can very well see the prospects of the engineering export sector. I think this year India has achieved remarkable progress, and this could be the testimony of the resurgence of engineering export sector in India. Now, what is the challenge that is before us is the supply capabilities and the supply capabilities in several states. We have to look for the nursing the existing markets and also look for new markets. So we need to have more protective regime both in the domestic economy and global economy, particularly for the micro enterprises which are still in the stage of infancy. Similarly, the high-tech sector is very much coming up in the MSc sector, and GVC is also one important area where greater participation is required. But despite of all those challenges and the tasks before us, we have very little understanding about the coverage of clusters, coverage of MSME across the country. So that requires a benchmark survey which could really unveil the specialization developed in specific states in the country. So I would just go to the slide saying that this is clearly indicating that what is our total exports and the performance of engineering exports. It is very much evident from the graph that engineering exports are growing hand in hand with the total exports of the country. Of course, it has got affected because of the various global trade regimes. But the more divergence one can see during the period of recession. But recently, what we have seen that very significant surge is quite significant. While export of India in 2021 increased by 10 times over between 2003 to 2021, it is 20 times hike in case of engineering exports. So it is very important to see that how things are evolving. I think we have tried to see it more minutely, taking DGCI's 8 groups of engineering goods covering nearly 4,975 products at 8-digit HS, inclusive of intermediate final goods, parts and components. In the engineering goods, the total exports in 2021 is amounting to $1,108 billion, which is nearly 25% of parts and components of the total exports of the country, and also more than 17% of the final capital goods exports of the country. So this particular sector is also highly capital export intensive sector, nearly more than 2/3 of it in the intermediate, medium and high-tech sectors. Looking at the structure of these 8 groups within the engineering goods, one can very well see that the growth is phenomenal in 2021, which increased in different segments. The growth between 27.5% to 71.7% is exceptionally very high growth. Iron and steel being the largest sector. One can see that in 2019, 2020, the year of pandemic, the sector declined. But I think it is important to see that where is the major areas where we have got our export destinations. I think it was only 1 billion and more. One can say the green areas where it has got large exports in the world economy, mostly North America and Europe, many parts in Asia. Coming to the size of markets, in 2003, one can say that only one market, US, having more than 1 billion engineering exports. When we entered into 2021, we see it is $1 billion and more exports in 31 different markets. So that one can see the surge in the sector. Now, looking at different broad 8 sectors, I think each color rectangular showing that each segment, and each segment one can see what could be India's priority. So in most of the cases, you can see that it is US, but in other different segments, you find that the destinations are different, and therefore you cannot take a single strategy to focus only specific countries. You have to have diversified strategy destinations for different segments. Similarly, you can see that for different segments, countries are also very specific. That is how we have to strategize our system. Now, coming to our exports, exports in different states, it is very clear that different states are having different level of exports in the engineering sector. Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Odisha, Maharashtra are some of the elite sectors in this particular engineering export segments, and one can see very large exports are coming from the western, southern, and eastern part of the country. Here you can see in different states, you can find specialization of different states. For example, if you look at the first one, overall sector, I think Gujarat, Maharashtra is the leading one, followed by Tamil Nadu, and then the third position, Gujarat and Odisha are coming. But if you go to the specific segments within the engineering export sector, I think states are different. Now, a comparison between now we are taking the digitized definition of MSME exports, and we have examined that the MSME exports vis-a-vis engineering exports in the MSME sector, and also the engineering export in MSME over and vis-a-vis the engineering exports in total. So very clearly indicating that MSME sector, engineering sector is doing well, but definitely bit lower than that of MSME. But if you look at the overall engineering sector, MSME sectors are doing better than that of the overall engineering export sector. Now, there is a convergence of sectors that one can see between different sectors. And here also you can see that for different colors depicting different segments of engineering exports, and the destinations are different for different segments. Here one can see that wherever some states are very strong in the exports of engineering exports, may not be the states where MSME sectors are also very active in the sector. So here one can see that Kerala, where having very little exports in this sector, but has got very large participation, 86% participation from MSME sector. On the other hand, a state like Odisha, where the penetration of export is pretty high in this particular sector, but the engagement of MSME is very low. Therefore, specific policies to be adopted to rectify this imbalance. Here we can say that in particular states, how they're specialized in different segments of engineering exports. So that's how we have to have our long-term strategy in the different FTAs. So methodology part is very rigorously done for the estimation of competitive exports and export potential, but I will not go into it because of the paucity of time. But the part I would like to say that in different states, one can see how much the total exports of the state in the engineering sector and how much it is coming from the MSME engineering export sector. Some states are pretty high, pretty improved as compared to other states in terms of their participation in MSME. So in the different sectors, you can very well see that the engagement of MSME engineering exports in certain sectors like iron and steel and other sectors, the engagement of MSME is very strong, but not in other sectors. So my last point is that I think the sector, engineering export sector, has a rebound in 2021, and there are the sector is really engaged in very high-end segments like parts and components, final capital goods, medium and high technology intensive sectors. So there are concerns that whatever sectors, earlier it was one sector having more than 1 million exports US. Now we have got similar such markets in 31 different countries. I think we have to maintain that and also look for new markets. States have to look for specialization within the engineering sectors and also at the product level. With this, let me conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mohanty, sir, for your very valuable feedback and insight. I also had a few points to make to adding to your presentation. Your presentation was very well presented in the PowerPoint presentation and very pictorial also. Also, adding on to the sectors where different states are going to perform the exports, our Honorable Prime Minister has also come up with one district, one product scheme for development, that each district in each area should develop a product and export it. I saw that in your first slide that the shipbuilding industry was the 8th on the point in the terms of export. And you'll be glad to all know that EEPC's next focus center is on shipbuilding. And we are we are holding a number of discussions and seminars to highlight to our industry, and specifically to our members, that shipbuilding can be a next business opportunity. Also, here I would like to add that the acceptance of the rupee in lieu of the US dollar by the Indian government recently has been a great step forward and will definitely help our SMEs for doing ease of business. So once again, thank you, Professor Monti, for a valuable feedback and insight. We have now reached at the concluding session, and let me, on behalf of the EPC, thank all our eminent speakers, Mr. Vincent Nord, Director, European Business and Technology Center, Mr. Vibhor Jain, COO and President, Network Governance, Open Network for Digital Commerce, Professor S.K. Monti, Professor Research and Information System for Developing Countries, for making their valuable insights and valuable time and spending their valuable time with us today. On the emerging dominance of digital tech and e-commerce platforms, I'm sure the information will prove very useful to our MSMEs in the near future. I also thank Madam Palvi and Team EEPC for organizing this excellent program. We will be having our next session on emerging OEM sectors in India and success stories, which will begin at 2 p.m. sharp. The speakers for this session would be Mr. Shantu Roy, Executive Director, Bharat Earth Movers Limited, Mr. Ravi Nath, Managing Director, Hindustan Syringes and Medical Devices Limited, Mr. Ashutosh Tripathi, Chief of Operations, Escorts Limited, Remco, CEO, Kiloska Brothers Thailand Limited. We all look forward to see you in the next session. Thank you very much. Over to you, Palvi.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for concluding the session, and I am thankful to all the eminent panelists for sparing their valuable time and sharing their perspective on this important subject. Thank you, Mr. Engineer, for moderating the session, and thank you, Ms. Kamakshi, for hosting the session. As indicated, the next session is at 2 p.m. and I request all the participants to kindly make it convenient to join the session by 1:50 p.m. Thank you all once again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. अब मेरा नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन सुन लीजिए. नीचे वाला जो आपका रो है उसमें भी एक कोड है EMD 561. तो ये भी कस्टमर कोड है, ये आपने इसमें